the testimony you're about to give should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please be seated.
Now, Detective Render, we've called you because you were the primary criminalistics detective involved in this case?
That is correct.
Okay, can you introduce yourself and tell us what you do for a living, please?
I'm Nathan Render. I'm currently assigned to the Field Services Bureau of the Albuquerque Police Department.
Okay. And what is the Field Services Bureau?
It's officers that take calls for service.
Before you were assigned to Field Services Bureau, did you serve as a criminalistics detective?
Yes.
Okay. Can you explain to us how a homicide crime scene is processed from the perspective of criminalistics?
When you say how, just in general?
Okay, well, let me be more specific. When you first discovered that there's been a homicide that you as a criminalistics detective have to respond to, what do you do?
As a primary detective, go to the crime lab, pick up the crime van, drive to the scene. Generally, there's a briefing held. As soon as all of the detectives are at the scene in the crime van.
So what's the point of that briefing?
Briefing is just to kind of get a general idea, the basic information that is known at the time, get a general idea of what happened, where it may have happened, things involved, if there's a weapon, things like that.
From the perspective of you as a primary criminalistics detective, what kind of information are you looking for at the initial briefing to help you do your job?
Again, any weapons involved, where people may have been, where they may have gone.
Okay. Is it fair to say that when you are the primary criminalistics detective, you supervise a team who need to collect evidence and take pictures and process people?
Correct.
When you collect evidence, what do you do with it?
It's put in a bag and then transferred to the crime van, stored in a secure locker. It's then taken to the crime lab, again stored in a secured locker until it's processed. Basically, up-close photographs, looking for anything else of value, where it's then packaged and tagged into the evidence unit.
Is there such a thing as a chain of custody?
Yes.
What's that term mean to you?
Basically, from start to finish, who touches it, where it goes.
And why do you do that?
So that you know where it's been, who's handled it.
Is it also important for people wondering whether an object brought into a courtroom is indeed the object that was found at a scene?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to talk to you about this case and how you got involved in March 16, 2014. How did you get the phone call that you were needed for this case?
I have a city-issued phone. The criminalistic supervisor called me on it, stating there was a call-out. Gave me the address.
And where'd you go?
To the crime lab to pick up the crime van.
And after that?
To the scene.
And whereabouts was the scene as you remember it?
812 Piedra Vista.
Is that
northeast.
Is that near the foothills?
It is.
Albuquerque? What did you see when you first arrived at the scene there?
There were a large number of people outside, assuming detectives, people waiting for the briefing.
When you had that briefing, that initial briefing, where was it held?
Inside a garage.
Do you know whose garage?
I believe it was Alexander Thixton.
And who did you understand Mr. Thixton to be in this case?
He's the original caller.
When you had that briefing, did you receive an initial description of the event you were supposed to investigate?
Yes.
Who gave that first description?
Sergeant, I believe, Jason Carpenter.
After Sergeant Carpenter, did one of the individuals involved in the incident give a briefing?
Yes.
And who was that?
Officer Weimer-Skurch.
After you received that, after you completed that initial briefing, did you go and begin processing the scene?
No.
What'd you do?
We began processing the officers involved.
And describe that.
Basically, each officer is brought into the crime van where they're photographed, checked for any evidence, which is then collected.
After you processed the individuals, did you then go process the scene?
We walked out to the scene, but at the time, I believe it was maybe 10, 11 o'clock at night. There were no lights because it was actually in the foothills area. It's extremely dark, so I decided to hold off from going into the scene until the sun was up, just to make sure we didn't accidentally disturb any evidence.
So does that mean that you had to wait until the following day to come actually process the scene?
Yes.
This is foundational, Judge.
Yeah, I didn't quite hear that. Counsel, I'm going to ask you to speak up.
Oh.
I have an objection. I didn't quite
I'm sorry, objection leading was my objection. I apologize, Your Honor.
All right, please rephrase it.
Because it was dark, what did you have to do?
I decided to wait until the sun could come up the next morning
Where'd you wait?
in the crime.
Did you continue, what did you continue doing while waiting for the sun to come up?
I believe we reviewed some of the video at the scene.
Now, I'll talk about that a little bit more, but eventually, as is the case in most days, did the sun come up?
Yes.
Okay, and when that sun came up, what did you do?
My secondary detective preceded us, photographing the area prior to anybody else going through it. After that was complete, then we started looking for evidence.
Okay. So did you set foot in the scene that was being processed?
I did.
First, draw your attention to State's Exhibit 57A, there in your binder.
Tab 57.
Yes, please. 57A there. What's that a picture of, Detective?
It's a picture of the open space area.
And aside from the fact that it doesn't have any of the objects that were out there, is it a fair and accurate depiction of that portion of the open space area you're investigating?
Yes.
Move the admission of 57A, Your Honor.
Any objection?
I'm just get a time frame. Did he take this? Let me ask a couple of foundational questions.
Well, if you're objecting to foundation, I would ask that you lay a little more foundation and find out whether this witness took this picture or not.
Well, I believe he testified that he didn't, Your Honor, but the foundation for a photograph is not that the individual took it, but that it is a fair and accurate depiction of the thing that the state claims it to be, which he's already testified that it is, Your Honor.
Of that particular day and time? I mean, I'm just trying to find out if it's a fair representation. The morning that he was talking about, and that's when the photograph was taken.
Once the sun was up and the light was good enough, does this photograph fairly and accurately depict what you saw there at the scene, with the exception of the fact that the objects are removed?
At the time we walked through the scene, yes.
With the admission of 57A, Your Honor.
Just get the clarification. Was this before or after the scene was cleaned up or processed? Now, that's what I want to know, is when this picture was taken, that's all. So I agree to it.
You want a short one here then?
Yes, if I can.
Go ahead.
So, officer, can you tell me when this picture was taken?
I believe it is after we had processed the scene.
Okay, so do you have any time? Do you know whether that was the same day or not?
It was.
Okay, so it was in the afternoon then?
I believe it was just later that morning.
Later that morning. So that was after things had been removed and gathered and evidence had been taken off of the mountain, if you will.
Correct.
Okay. And were you there when the picture was taken?
At the exact moment the picture was taken, I'm not 100% sure where I was at.
But how, if you're not sure, how do you know that this picture was taken then, the time frame you just told me? I mean, did you keep this picture yourself and say did you make some kind of note saying this picture was taken on this time, in this place, by this person?
I know it was taken by my secondary detective Kleinfeld. And there was evidence in that area, so I know it was after all the evidence had been collected.
That's That's as much as you can narrow this down to?
Yes.
I'm just going to check for lack of foundation, Judge.
Any response at all?
Your Honor, I think we can stipulate, based on the fact that the objects are removed, that this picture was taken after the objects were removed. This is just to show the general layout of that particular scene from this perspective. Again, the only requirement of a foundation is that it fairly and accurately depicts the thing we claim it depicts, Your Honor.
I'll find that by preponderance of the evidence, it is what it purports to be, and it'll be admitted over objection. That's 57.
All right, so a little washed out there, the light's a little bright. Change that. That's a little better. Okay, so I'd now like you to take a look at 57B, please. What is 57B?
It's a large rock at the north end of the scene.
And on that picture, there are 3 Post-it notes marking features on that rock.
Objection, leading and using facts that are not in evidence and using them as part of his question.
Yes, counsel, if you could just ask him what's depicted there, please.
In addition to the fact that it's a rock, what else is on that rock?
On the rock are 3 impact indicators.
And what's that?
It's our way of indicating what evidence is what. I indicating bullet impact, and then a number 1, 2, 3, 4, however many we find. Also on top of the rock is a target we use with our 3D laser scanner.
Does this picture fairly and accurately depict that rock with those impact indicators and that laser scanner device at the time that you saw it that day?
Yes.
Move the admission of 57B, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor. 57B will be admitted.
Okay, now that we can take a look at it, you were describing impact indicators. In this photograph, there's an orange square that I'm pointing to with my pen. Can you explain to us what that is I'm pointing to?
That is an impact indicator labeled as I2.
And above that is a slightly lighter portion of that rock. What is that?
That is the impact.
So how many impacts are depicted on this rock?
3.
And how many were there when you saw the rock that day?
3.
At some point were those labels and that 3D scan device removed from that rock?
Yes.
I'd like you to turn to 57C, please, sir. Does 57C fairly and accurately depict that same rock after those impact indicators and the 3D scanning apparatus were removed?
Yes.
Your Honor, move the admission of 57C.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor. 57C will be admitted.
All right, so comparing 57B and D, let's go from kind of left to right here. So if 57B, the impact was there for the first indicator on the left, what am I pointing to on this light portion of the rock here with my pen now?
That would be impact I2.
And what am I pointing to in this light portion of the rock here with my pen now?
That would be the impact indicated as I1.
And what about this lighter portion near this kind of broken part of the rock up there?
Impact I3.
After you collected evidence and processed the officers and taken pictures in a crime scene processing, is there a point at which you end up writing a report?
Yes.
And is that report based on the information that you gather in the course of your investigation?
Yes.
And is it made at or around the time that you gather that information and compile that investigation?
Or shortly thereafter.
And is that a regular part of the Albuquerque Police Department Criminalistics Division to do that?
Yes.
Is it a regular part of the Albuquerque Police Department to create those reports?
Yes.
Can we take a look at State's Exhibit 43, and I think for our list we made this A, B, and C, but really it's all one document that we have here. It's an excerpt looking at 43. What's State's Exhibit 43?
It's a copy of my criminalistics report,
Okay.
or at least most of it.
Okay. And with the exception of the fact that it's not the entire thing, is it in the same or substantially same conditions when you submitted it?
Yes.
Move the admission of State's Exhibit 43, Your Honor.
I would object, Your Honor. I think what I'm seeing here is portions of a police report. They want to introduce the entire police report in this case. I don't think I necessarily would have the same problem, but this is not a complete, it's hearsay.
Same objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
I think we've established under 11-8036, Your Honor, this is a business record maintained by the department. Now, as to Mr. Bregman's concern that this isn't the entire report, we don't have to introduce the entire report, just the parts that we think are relevant to this line of questioning, Your Honor.
I mean, you are offering this document in its entirety for the truth of the matter asserted, although you're saying it's a business record kept in the ordinary course of business, correct?
We are offering it for the truth of the matter asserted, which would make it hearsay, except it meets the hearsay exception, which is 11-8036, Your Honor, yes.
Can I just respond to that?
Sure.
I'm looking here at 11, let's see, let me make sure. It's 11-803, 6, and then, I mean, I don't see it that this would contemplate police reports. I'm pretty convinced that I can't remember the last time a criminal case in which just a police report, because it's such rank, it is hearsay in its entirety, comes in under a business record exception, Your Honor. Otherwise, every police report could come in every single case, and it just isn't, I just don't feel comfortable even agreeing with that at all. So I would suggest that it should stay out as hearsay, and they're offering it for the truth of matters asserted.
And Your Honor, if I may, this report's dated July 2nd, 2014. This is more than 2 months after the incident in question. 11-8036 requires that it be made at or near the time. This was 2 months after, Your Honor.
Counsel, I seem to recall a rule, I don't see it now, that there was a specific rule that discussed police reports in general, their admissibility, and I just can't seem to find it, but perhaps it's been...
I think I can clarify, Your Honor.
Sure.
There's a hearsay exception called the public record exception, which allows the record of regularly conducted public activity to be introduced, different from 8036 Business Record Foundation. Now, I think where the court might have some concern is the public record exception explicitly does not allow the state to introduce that evidence. But as far as business record exception, those kind of reports are offered all the time. In fact, in this very case, the defense has offered documents generated by the police department, the CAD reports, under the 8036 Business Record Foundation.
But you mentioned, I realize that, but it also, in paragraph 8, it talks about police reports not generally coming in criminal cases, and that's my concern.
Well, that's under the public records exception.
I understand that, yeah. And I mean, I think, wouldn't you agree with me that this is also a public record?
Well, I think the fact that it might potentially meet two different kinds of exceptions to the hearsay rule, Your Honor, doesn't mean it doesn't meet one of them. And again, the purpose is to introduce a public record, you need only lay the public record foundation, which is much more limited than the business record foundation. And that's why we often see things like the reports of results, blood alcohol content results from the Intoxilizer 5000 in DWI cases. Those are laid and introduced into the business record foundation. And as far as the time constraint concern that Mr. Audio had, it's either at the time of the event or from information transmitted by someone with knowledge. And Detective Renders already testified to both, that he made it about this at the time, and it's based on his knowledge that he gathered in the investigation, Your Honor.
Why would the rules of evidence be very specific that it can't come in criminal cases like this? And one area, knowing full well that somebody, of course, would argue the other areas, business records, it just doesn't come in. It's very specific. It does not come in. For them simply to change the heading on which one they want to get under, they were very specific. And when they said it does not come into the criminal case.
Well, and Your Honor, to state again what Mr. Bregman stated, that if this does come in, fairness would demand under 11106 that the entire police report come in.
Counsel, I'm not going to allow the admission of 43. You can certainly ask the officer about what he did, and if he needs to look at this document, refresh his memory, you can certainly do that.
All right, Your Honor. So, at some point in the investigation and the processing of the scenes, did you collect any rifles from any individuals?
I did not personally, but they were collected, yes.
And what's the purpose of taking rifles in this case?
For testing and comparison purposes.
When that's done, does the department maintain chain of custody for those rifles?
Yes.
And were those rifles provided to Albuquerque Police Department ballistics analysts?
Yes.
What's the purpose of that?
To test fire them, collect casings and projectiles for examination.
And at some point, did those test fires come back to you, or did you ever receive those test fires?
Not the test fires themselves, no.
Okay. Instead, were they checked into evidence with proper chain of custody maintained?
I believe so, yes.
At some point,
I just think the last answer be stricken because it's speculation and hearsay. It's based on he doesn't have any personal knowledge to testify to what he just said.
do you have personal knowledge of whether the bullets were checked into evidence?
No.
At some point, did you obtain a bullet from the Office of the Medical Investigator?
Yes.
How did you get that?
After the autopsy is conducted, all the evidence that the Office of the Medical Investigator gathers, and then we go and pick up and bring back to the lab.
Okay, and do you maintain chain of custody on that?
Yes.
All right. Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
I'm handing you what's been marked. 53 is the... Handing you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 53. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
What is it?
It's the projectile that I collected from the Office of the Medical Investigator.
And is that in the same or substantially same condition as when you received it?
mean, the envelope that I tagged into evidence has been opened, but it's the envelope that I tagged into evidence.
Okay, and other than the openings and the resealings, is it in the same condition as when you tagged it in?
Yes.
Move the admission of 53, Your Honor.
Can I board hire the witness on that, Your Honor?
Go ahead.
So, can I add just a couple of questions? Where's the chain of custody on that specific document, that envelope? In other words, tell me who's opened it, what day they opened it, what they did with it, when they put it back in, when they closed it. Can you do any of that based on that envelope?
I don't know specifically when it was opened.
Do you know by who it was opened by?
I'm not familiar with the initials.
Okay, and so, how many times has it been opened?
At least 3 times. At least.
So you'd agree with me that that envelope itself has been altered since the last time you saw it, correct?
From when I tagged it in, it has been opened several times.
It's not in the same condition as when you tagged it in, is it?
No.
And you do not have a chain of custody sheet with you today to testify to exactly when that envelope was opened, when it was closed, by who did it, or where it was when it was opened, correct?
I do not know.
And you also don't know whether or not the contents inside that envelope have ever been opened and been free of that envelope. Is that correct?
Correct.
Your Honor, complete lack of foundation, I object to its introduction.
I'm a little confused, but Officer, did you receive the envelope sealed from OMI, or what condition was the envelope in?
It was a small envelope which was sealed by OMI personnel. I then took and placed that envelope inside this larger envelope.
So you placed the smaller envelope into the larger envelope?
Correct.
Okay. State anything?
Yes, Your Honor. New Mexico Rule of Evidence 11-901 governs the authentication and identification of exhibits. And as I said, as far as physical objects are concerned, all that we need to show is that it's in the same or substantially same condition as when they saw it. He said that with the exception of the changes in chain of custody, it is. Now, thankfully, our rules have annotations, and in the annotation from State v. Chavez 84 NM 760, it says the identical condition and absence of tampering need not be shown for admissibility. That is, it goes to the weight, not the admissibility of the object, Your Honor. If they want to talk about chain of custody and whether this has been tampered with, they can try and plow that ground, I guess, but the evidence should come in under the
My
rules.
question is, Ms. Holmes, essentially we're talking about the item that's in the envelope and whether that particular item's in the same condition, correct?
Well, the envelope and the item, and I think if the court's concerned, we can ask Detective Render to open the envelope. It's a biohazard, Your Honor. That's
Well,
why
I think that would certainly assist me in determining whether this indeed was the item that he received from OMI, because he's simply testifying to the envelope not being in the same condition. And in actuality, you're alleging that the projectile inside the envelope.
Scissors, Your Honor. Your Honor, if I can find some
I
scissors.
think they were up there, right there.
Are they there?
I think the detectives don't use
Officer
it.
Render?
Cut it out, cut it out, so. Or perhaps Ruth has some scissors. No,
Someone took our scissors?
Bill, do you
Oh,
have
Bill?
scissors? Okay, right, there you go.
And there's another here. All right, is that okay? Sure. Okay.
Go ahead and open it.
Please. And just for the record, can you describe what you pulled out of that larger envelope, please?
It's a smaller envelope sealed with a tag in writing from the Office of the Medical Investigator.
All right. And so we've called that 53, so I guess we'll call this 53 A.
Can I see where you open your envelope? Thank you.
We do? All right, well. Okay, we'll call it 53B. All right, have you seen that envelope before, Detective?
Yes.
Where have you seen it before?
It's the envelope that I picked up from the Office of the Medical Investigator.
Other than any changes represented by it being open in the chain of custody, is it in the same or substantially same condition as when you saw it?
Yes.